Hello and welcome to Car Dealer Live, where today we're speaking about the Chancellor Rishi Sunak's announcement relating to the replacement for the furlough scheme and helping businesses cash flow. As we're recording this, the Chancellor is still in the House of Commons with ministers questioning him. Don't say we don't bring the news to you as it happens, but to understand exactly what's been announced, to speak a little bit more in detail about this and what it really means to car dealers, we've got two of our most eloquent, knowledgeable guests, two of the most eloquent people I have the privilege to speak to. Of course, we've got Nona Bowkis from Lawgistics, and we've got ASE Global Chairman Mike Jones. Hello, both.
Hi.
Hi, James. Lovely introduction, by the way.
Well, it is. It's lovely to have the pair of you on. And as soon as, you know, the news of all of this broke sort of yesterday afternoon, yesterday evening, when the Chancellor was going to make some kind of announcement, it's timely to speak to you. So, Nona, can I just turn to you first, really? Rishi Sunak started the announcement by talking about this replacement for the furlough scheme. Of course, this is the big thing that everybody's been asking for. Can you just give us a quick summary of what he has said, please?
Right, okay. Well, furlough is definitely ending. October is the last month for that, so that's a gone. And what is coming in its place is something called the Job Support Scheme. I'm just taking some of my notes I've just taken down. So he's very much focusing on supporting viable jobs, because I think I said in a car dealer interview earlier on in the week that I think he's left it late because he didn't want to use it as a kind of social security system where we were just paying people with jobs that were never going to be sustainable. So he's got a lot of criticism for bringing this in late, but I think that's the reason behind it. It's about value to the taxpayer as much as anything else in regards to timing. So that's the main point of it. It's support for viable jobs is what he's saying. And what he's saying is employers can bring people back from furlough, and as long as they work for at least 1/3 of their normal hours, which the employer will pay for, there is going to be the other 2/3 paid, or up to 2/3, it says, between the government and the employer. No further detail than that. Obviously, the devil is in the detail, and that will come later. He said it'll be published shortly. What's shortly? I don't know. But basically, people are going to come up to work, so 1/3 of their hours, the employer will pay that 1/3, and the employer, the government, will pay the other 2/3 somehow. They have to be employed as of yesterday, so you can't suddenly take someone on today and make it. Obviously, there's news about furlough fraud as well, so they've got to look after that. It's for small and medium-sized businesses. So the large businesses, I assume those with more than 250 staff, not eligible unless their turnover starts to drop. And then again, it's across the whole of the UK. So even if companies have not used furlough, I think most car dealers are on furlough at some part. I guess that brings in people like me and you who were working all the way through. Because remember, the furlough scheme at the moment, you can't put someone on part-time furlough if they were not on furlough before the end of June, whereas this is brand new. So it's for employers that have never used furlough before, and presumably then employees that were not part of furlough on in the year as well. So it's a bit more open, it's probably a bit fairer, not dissimilar to the flexible furlough that we're on now. But the important thing is they can do this. It's got to go for 6 months. Can't make them redundant during that 6 months, but they will also get a £1,000 job retention bonus that is coming at the end of January if you keep people on. So it kind of gives a bit of an edge to that, because we were all saying, really, there doesn't seem much point in that.
Precisely,
It might be a nice little bit of bonus now.
Yeah. So, I mean, what's your view on that? Do you think that's a good move, especially for car dealers, or do you think it doesn't quite it isn't all that helpful?
I think really, certainly the dealers we're talking to, they've already made a lot of their decisions. And again, that feeds into that viable job element from there. They've either, because I think business has come back pretty good. Loads of our dealers are saying the market's quite buoyant and they're doing very well. So they've either made their decisions to keep their staff on, or they're going through the redundancy process as we speak. So I'm not sure how much of a difference it will make, but it's there, it's an option. And if we do go into a heavier type of lockdown, then I guess that's where it will come into play a little bit there, where perhaps they can do just online sales rather than having to open. They might be able to do a part-time sort of arrangement then. But I would say certainly most dealers we talked to have already gone through their efficiency savings and looked at how their business is going to look going forward.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
suppose that is an important point, isn't it? Because when it was announced that there was this going to be general sort of tapering of the furlough scheme, was it back in July or something like that, June or July, wasn't it? Of course, dealers and all other companies, but especially dealers, were having to make some decisions. And of course, it ends next month. So, like you say, those decisions have probably already been made. But I suppose, there's always this argument of, the Chancellor is damned if he does, and he's damned if he doesn't. So it's an important decision, but it's done in very difficult times, really, isn't it? So, Mike, can I just turn to you? What did you take away from the announcement, from your perspective?
I think the key thing is the viable part for viable jobs, for people who are already back working under the part-time scheme. There's going to be continued support. I think for the people who are still on furlough, it's going to be a really difficult decision. For motor retailers, I think that it will continue to support them over the course of the next 6 months. They're going to get, or more than 6 months as it rolls out from its commencement, they're going to get additional support for bringing people back part-time. The hospitality, entertainment, sports industries, where they're really struggling at the moment with lots of people on furlough, I think they are going to struggle. So it's probably going to hit car retailers from a demand side as we look at increasing unemployment as we go through the course of the next 6 months from people working in those industries. So we're going to see decreased demand. The IFS reckon we could have an extra couple of million people unemployed compared to the start of this year. So we might see that filtered through. Just on the scheme that he's announced, looking at some of the graphics that they've put up, if the employee is working for a third of their time, then the employer, as Nona says, pays that third. The remaining 2/3 is then split equally between the employee taking a pay cut, the employer paying effectively a third of that 2/3, and the government paying a third of that 2/3. So if the employee is working for a third of their time, they'll get 77% of their pay, and 55% of their normal pay. The burden will be taken by the employer and 22% by the government. If they're working half their time, then the employer pays half, and then the remaining half is split a third, a third, a third. I mean, as with all government announcements, we need to get into the real detail when they publish it over the course of the next little while to find all of the hoops that we have to jump through and all the details. But that's based on a Treasury graphic that they posted. I mean, one thing we have seen with the introduction of Rishi is an improvement in their social media things. He was live streaming everything. He was posting all sorts of stuff from his personal account and also from the Treasury account. So there is some little nuggets there we'll need to test. But to answer your initial question, I think this will support car retailers. It'll support them with their costs, albeit that with them having to take that percentage, that third of the employees' time when they're not working, I still think that people will take a hard look as to whether this is a viable job in the long term, and so I think we will still continue to see redundancies in the sector as people look at their medium to long term plans and go, do we need this person even part time, or frankly, do we reallocate those hours across existing people and increase their efficiency and the amount of time they work?
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you, because I just feel as though the mood has changed, and the mood has changed quite quickly over the past few weeks, hasn't it? Because, when the furlough scheme was introduced, it was more all about freezing the job market and keeping it, almost putting in aspic, I suppose, wasn't it? Whereas now, okay, yes, there is this new job retention scheme. It's designed to help out companies and employees should they need it. But the climate has changed a lot, hasn't it? And I'm sure there are plenty of dealers out there and people in charge of companies who will be thinking, do you know what? Let's stop kicking the can down the road, and we just need to face realities here. And unfortunately, that may mean some redundancies. But the climate has changed, doesn't it?
Absolutely. When he introduced the furlough scheme, we all thought it was going to be temporary. We all thought we were going to take a short period of time off over the summer, and then we were going to start getting drip fed back in and getting back to life as was normal. Having written a check for the furlough scheme of sort of 80 to 90 billion, he's now realised that this is going on. We're looking at now not really being out of this until they find a vaccine and we start getting that out, talking spring next year. As we move into summer and we all stop living indoors again and we start getting outside. So I think everybody, including the Chancellor, is now looking towards the medium term. From a car retailer point of view, since we've come back to work in June and been fully open, it's been buoyant. Used cars has been phenomenally strong. New cars continues to be strong. We're still up on September last year from a registration point of view as we sit here now. After sales has been really, really strong because we had that period of time where we weren't servicing vehicles and people need to catch up on MOTs. So the good times are very much still there at the moment. And I think if we're managing to process that amount of work with somebody still being on furlough, businesses will be taking a long, hard look as to, is it going to get any better during Q4 and Q1? And therefore, do I need to bring this person back or keep them on this new scheme? Or do I just, unfortunately, have to make them redundant?
Yeah. No, I'm sure you're speaking to plenty of dealers who are probably saying exactly the same thing, aren't they? I know we've just said that a lot of people have already made their decisions, but for some dealers, this doesn't really change much, does it? For some, it may well do, but for others, it probably doesn't change the situation at all, really, does it?
Yeah, certainly. I say the last probably 2 months, we put on our legal helpline, we've had lots and lots of redundancy type questions from there. What's the process? How long do we have to give people, etc., just to keep on the right side of the law? So yeah, I think a lot have already put whatever they're going to put in place, but it might give people a bit of an opportunity to say, well, we was going to let that person go, but maybe we can keep them on over the winter. But Mike's right, it's a sort of short, medium term thing. This is over the winter.
Yeah.
We are expecting the vaccine to be available and everything else, and we may go back to some sort of normal at some point next year. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Furlough was when everything frozen, but now everything's got to keep moving slightly. But yeah, I don't see where it will help. For those that have got people on flexible furlough, it's very, very similar to that, I think. So perhaps those that are in that position where they've got part-time staff already, it just means they haven't got to think about getting rid of them at the end of October. They can keep them going for another 6 months. And obviously, if they were on proper furlough before, they get their £1,000 bonus for them as well at the end of January, beginning of February.
Yeah. And like you and I have said in a few car dealer lives, we have sort of questioned the point of that January thing, but I suppose now it seems a little bit more sort of understandable now, doesn't it?
Yeah, because it's because of a bonus on a bonus, really.
Yeah.
That was what was in their minds when they put it together, to be fair, because I think this has got to come around because of the uptick in the alleged uptick in the number of cases around, and that it's possibly going to get out of control again, etc. But I don't think he was ever going to make an announcement on this until much nearer the time for the whole viability thing.
Yeah. Mike, there was a bit of a sort of talk about deferred VAT as well, wasn't there? And this has got the potential to be a real sort of godsend for car dealers, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there were a few things that he did from a cash flow point of view to help retailers. I mean, the VAT bill that most businesses deferred from Q1 this year was scheduled to be due in Q1 next year. That would have been a big cash flow headache for many businesses. Just as they're starting to get back to work, just as they're starting to generate cash, they'd got this big VAT bill from the prior year, particularly in the automotive sector, where March is a challenging time from a cash flow point of view anyway, given hopefully the large number of vehicles that we're pushing out, and therefore the sort of fleet and retail debtors and bonus debtors that people might have. So I was already forecasting it was going to be a problem. Now he said that can be spread over 11 months. He said that it's going to be interest-free, which is great and makes it an awful lot more manageable for people. He's also done a couple of things on the loan schemes that are out there at the moment, extending the time period for applying for them. The Chancellor stood up and said December. The Treasury tweet said November. Either way, worst case scenario, it's moved from the end of September to the end of November, and we should get at least another couple of months to put the applications in, and then get the funding by December. The loans can now be spread over 10 years rather than 6. So the Chancellor said that would sort of roughly halve the repayments. And he said that people can, if they get into severe difficulty, they can ask to go interest only on the loan. So again, I think he's thinking much more long term, that we're going to have a much slower run out of this virus than he was initially thinking when he set up all these things. And he also announced or pre-trialed the fact that as of January, we will end up with a new loan support scheme, details to be announced. So we can expect to be doing one of these in the middle of December, as he announces one of those 5 minutes before the deadline runs out. But no, a lot of decent sort of cash flow support schemes for businesses that are viable, deferring everything, meaning that we don't have to go for retailers to HMRC, which we would have done anyway, for a time to pay arrangement on these VAT bills. That would have happened. He's just made it sort of automatic for everybody as and when they want it.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to talking more about that when we're wearing our Christmas jumpers in December. I'll put a date in my diary. I don't expect you to, but there we are. Mike, just quickly, do you think what you've just said there is really going to help? Will it help out a particular type of dealer, like small dealers, or do you think this will equally help out the big dealers as well?
I think the people who are they're seeing reduced demand at the moment, and as a result, they've tried to keep all their staff on, and they've just reduced their hours for each of them, going onto the flexible furlough scheme. It will really help those guys around the margins keep those people on, albeit they're going to have some difficult decisions. So it'll help. The cash flow support will help everybody who's applied for it. That's to be welcomed. The job retention scheme, the job support scheme, I'm not sure that that's really going to make much of a difference as we go forward. It might enable people, if we do see a drop off in demand as we go through Q4 and into Q1, it might help people just drop hours from people for their employees a little bit to help them get through that. But at the moment, it's more the supply side of new vehicle sales that's causing me a problem rather than the demand side. Demand is remaining strong, and as I said, my concern is that in the wider economy we end up with some fall off in demand as a result of redundancies, which then feeds through to sort of motor retailers in Q4 and into Q1.
Yeah. Well, fantastic. I know it's a little bit off the cuff this chat, because like both of you have said, we're all going to have to read the detail a little bit, and further bits will be dribbling out over the next few weeks or so. But fantastic. I really do appreciate the pair of you coming on and getting some really important insight there into what it actually means for dealers. So Mike, thank you. Nona, thank you so much for coming on.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, James.
Well, that's it for today's Car Dealer Live. If you want to be involved in a show just like this one, please do email me. But until next time, thank you for watching. Bye-bye.